Tasha Monroe's hand freezes mid-pour. The water keeps coming, spilling across white tablecloth, splashing onto the lap of the woman sitting across from them. The woman gasps, jerks back. But Tasha isn't looking at her. She's looking at the couple who just sat down. Her ex-husband Derek, his new fiancé, at her table, in her section. Like the universe decided tonight wasn't humiliating enough already. Before Tasha can form an apology, Derek's mother stands. Slowly, the way predators stand when they've cornered prey. Linda Pierce looks at Tasha like she just crawled out from the dumpster behind the restaurant. Her voice cuts through the quiet, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Of course they'd assign the help with no home training to our table. Tasha's throat closes. She grabs napkins. Her hand shakes so badly she's making the spill worse. Linda plucks the napkins from Tasha's fingers with 2 delicate touches, like picking up something diseased. She turns to the fiancé whose dress has a small wet spot. "I'm so sorry, Amanda. This is exactly why I called ahead to request competent staff." Derek sits with his arms crossed, watching this happen. His lips curve into something that isn't quite a smile but close enough. His fiancée whispers something to him. He just shrugs. Like this is entertainment. Like Tasha's humiliation is dinner theater he paid for. Linda's voice drops lower but somehow carries further. "You know what's sad?" She steps closer to Tasha, close enough that the scent of her perfume, something expensive that probably costs more than Tasha's monthly rent, fills the air between them. 3 years ago, I actually tried to teach you how to present yourself properly. I brought you to our country club. I introduced you to our friends. I even bought you appropriate clothes because God knows you couldn't afford them yourself." Tasha whispers that she's sorry, that it was an accident. The words come out wrong, broken. An accident. Linda's expression shifts into something almost pitying. Almost. "Everything with you was always an accident, wasn't it? Accidentally getting pregnant so my son would marry you." She pauses, lets the silence stretch. "Oh wait, that was a lie too, wasn't? You lied about being pregnant to trap him." Derek's younger sister Catherine lets out a small laugh, covers her mouth. Derek's father nods slightly, like Linda is making excellent points at a business presentation. Derek himself just keeps watching, not saying anything, just watching Tasha fall apart in real time. The thing is, Tasha never lied about being pregnant. She had a miscarriage at 8 weeks and Derek knew that. He was there at the hospital. He held her hand while the doctor explained what happened. But that truth doesn't matter now. Not when Linda's rewriting history for an audience of strangers who will believe whatever sounds more dramatic. Linda steps even closer. "I told Derek you weren't worth the settlement money. I told him to let you walk away with nothing." Her voice goes quieter, almost gentle, which somehow makes it worse. "But he felt sorry for you. He actually wanted to give you $50,000, can you imagine? $50,000 for 3 years of disappointing my son. I had to explain to him that giving you money would be like rewarding bad behavior, like giving a dog a treat for peeing on the carpet." Amanda shifts uncomfortably. Even she looks like this might be going too far, but Derek reaches over and squeezes his fiancée's hand, reassuring. His eyes never leave Tasha. He's enjoying this, actually enjoying it. That's the part that makes Tasha's chest tight, not the words, the fact that the man she used to love is getting off on watching his mother destroy her. "So we gave you nothing." Linda straightens, smooths her dress. "Because that's what you earned, nothing. And now look at you, right back where you started, serving people who are better than you. At least now you're doing it honestly instead of pretending to be one of us." Mr. Chen appears at Linda's elbow. The manager. His face is flushed. He's been watching from across the room, trying to decide when to intervene. He tells Linda in his most soothing voice that he apologizes for the inconvenience. Of course there will be no charge for their meal tonight. Linda doesn't even look at him. She just holds out her hand and snaps her fingers. Twice. Mr. Chen flinches, nods quickly. He turns to Tasha and tells her in a tight voice to go to the kitchen. Immediately. Tasha's legs feel like they might give out, but she forces them to move. As she walks away, she hears Linda tell Amanda, in a voice meant to carry, that some people simply don't have the breeding to rise above their station. Amanda murmurs something diplomatic. Catherine giggles again. Derek says his first words since Tasha spilled the water. His voice is lazy, amused. "Mom, you're being mean." Linda sits back down and picks up her menu. "Darling, I'm being honest. There's a difference." In the kitchen, Tasha stands at the industrial sink with both hands gripping the edge. Her reflection in the stainless steel is distorted, ugly. Two other servers pretend not to look at her. The head chef tells her to take out the trash if she needs a minute to pull herself together. His voice isn't unkind, but it's not sympathetic either. Everyone heard what just happened. Everyone knows she used to be married to the man at table 12. Everyone knows she's the waitress who tried to marry rich and failed spectacularly. Tasha grabs 3 trash bags because she needs something to do with her hands. She needs to be away from the bright lights and the curious stares and the knowledge that Derek and his family are still out there, probably laughing about what just happened, probably already composing the story they'll tell at their next dinner party, probably perfecting the punchline. She shoves through the back door into February cold. The alley is dark and the air hurts her lungs. She sets down 2 of the bags and presses her forehead against the brick wall. She's not crying. She stopped crying about the Pierce family 6 months ago when she signed papers that said she was walking away with nothing after 3 years of marriage. But her hands are shaking and her chest feels tight, and she can still hear Linda's voice explaining to an entire restaurant that Tasha is worthless. That's when she hears it. The wet sound of something hard hitting flesh, over and over. She turns her head and sees 2 men in expensive coats beating someone against the dumpster 20 feet away. The victim's head is bleeding. He's not fighting back anymore, just trying to cover his face while they keep hitting him. The sound is organic, wrong, like breaking branches except worse because branches don't whimper. Tasha's brain goes blank. She drops the 3rd trash bag, and it hits the concrete with a sound like a gunshot. Both men stop. The younger one turns, looks directly at her. He has blood on his gloves. If you think Tasha's night just went from humiliating to dangerous, you have no idea what's about to happen next. Hit that subscribe button because what starts as a witness to violence is about to become something much darker and way more complicated than Tasha ever imagined. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when desperation meets opportunity in the worst possible way. For 3 full seconds they just stare at each other. Tasha's brain screams at her to run, but her legs won't move. She's frozen, watching him watch her. He says something in Korean to the older man, who immediately starts dragging the unconscious victim toward a black SUV parked at the end of the alley. Then he walks toward Tasha. Not fast, just steady, like he has all the time in the world. Like she's a problem he already solved in his head and now he's just executing the solution. He stops 6 feet away and pulls off his gloves. Slowly, his hands underneath are clean. He planned this. He wore gloves because he's done this before. Because he knows how to not leave evidence. Because beating someone unconscious in an alley is just another Tuesday for him. He asks her name in perfect English. No accent, just calm curiosity. Tasha's mouth is too dry to work. He asks again. She says Nicole. It's a lie. The first name that comes to her head. He tilts his head slightly, like he's deciding whether to believe her. Then he asks what she does here. She says dishwasher. Another lie. Dishwashers are invisible. Waitresses get remembered. Waitresses have to clock in and out and have schedules that can be tracked. He pulls out his phone and takes her picture. The flash blinds her. She blinks spots from her vision and watches him look at the photo, then back at her face, comparing them. making sure they match. He asks how long she's worked here. She says 3 months. The truth is 8 months, but she's trying to sound temporary. Forgettable. Someone not worth killing over seeing something she shouldn't have seen. He studies her and she realizes he's noticing things. That her hands are shaking, but she hasn't cried or screamed or tried to run. That she's just standing there taking instructions like a good employee. Like someone who's been trained her entire life to shrink herself, follow orders, survive by being invisible. Something changes in his expression. Not sympathy, recognition, like he sees something in her that he understands, like maybe they're not so different. He steps aside and gestures toward the door. She walks past him and her legs almost give out. She reaches for the handle. It doesn't open, the door locked behind her automatically. She turns around and he's already getting into the black SUV. He doesn't look back. The car pulls away with the unconscious man inside, and Tasha is left alone in the alley with 6 bags of trash and the understanding that her face is now in a stranger's phone. If she talks to anyone about what she saw, she's dead. If she goes to the police, she's dead. If she does anything except pretend this never happened, she's dead. She pounds on the door until a line cook opens it and asks why she looks like she saw a ghost. She says the cold got to her. He believes it. Inside the kitchen is bright and loud and normal, and nobody knows that Tasha's life just got infinitely more complicated. She finishes her shift, clocks out, takes the subway home to her studio in the Bronx. The apartment is smaller than Derek's walk-in closet used to be. The heat barely works. There's a water stain on the ceiling that's been growing for 3 months. Her bed is a mattress on the floor. She has $17 in her checking account and rent is due in 4 days. That night she doesn't sleep. She keeps seeing the flash from the camera, her face captured, stored, available whenever that man decides she's a problem that needs solving. She tells herself that if she keeps her head down and her mouth shut, nothing will happen. People witness crimes in New York every day and survive by minding their business. She's just another person who saw something and chose survival over justice. That's normal. That's smart. That's how you stay alive in a city that eats people who think they're heroes. 3 days later, she's serving lunch. Table 6. She walks over with her notepad, and the businessman sitting there looks up from his menu. Her stomach drops. It's him, the man from the alley, sitting there in a suit that probably cost 6 months of her rent, reading the menu like he didn't beat someone unconscious 72 hours ago. Like this is a coincidence. Except Tasha knows it's not. Her notepad nearly slips from her hand. She asks if they're ready to order. Her voice comes out steadier than it should. He orders grilled salmon with no butter and sparkling water with lime. His 3 colleagues keep talking about real estate in Queens. Development opportunities. Zoning changes. He listens without contributing much. His eyes never leave the menu. But Tasha knows he's aware of her standing there. She can feel it. That same calculating assessment from the alley. He's deciding something about her, and she doesn't know what. She brings their food, clears their plates, refills their water. The entire time he doesn't acknowledge that he recognizes her. It's only when she brings the check that he makes eye contact. Just for 1 second. Just long enough for her to understand this isn't random. He came here specifically to see her, to send a message. Then he signs the receipt, leaves a $100 tip on an $80 lunch. Under the cash is a business card, no name. Just an address in Tribeca and a phone number. Tasha shoves it in her apron before anyone sees. That night she hides it in her underwear drawer and tries to forget about it. But she keeps taking it out, staring at the address like it might explain itself, like the numbers and letters will rearrange themselves into instructions that make sense. They don't. It's just an address, just a phone number, just a choice she hasn't made yet but knows she will. He comes back 2 days later. This time he sits at the bar where he can see her section in the mirror. He orders whiskey he doesn't drink, just holds the glass, watches her work for 40 minutes. A customer snaps at Tasha for bringing the wrong brand of sparkling water. She apologizes, fixes it with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes, the kind of smile she perfected during 3 years of marriage, the kind that says, "I'm sorry for existing." The man at the bar sees this. He leaves another $100 tip and walks out without touching his drink. Fourth visit comes right before closing when the restaurant is almost empty. He sits in her section and orders coffee he doesn't touch. When she brings the check, he asks quietly if she got his card. She lies, says no, must have thrown it away with the receipts. He smiles like he expected that answer. Like her lying is part of a script he already memorized. He asks what time she gets off. She says midnight, but it's actually 11:30. He nods, says his car will be waiting out front to give her a ride home. Since it's late and the subway isn't safe for a woman alone, she says she'll be fine. He leaves a $50 on a $12 check. That night at 11:30, Tasha walks out the front entrance. There's a black Mercedes at the curb with a driver who looks at her expectantly. She walks past it to the subway. The car doesn't follow. She thinks maybe that's the end of it. Maybe he got bored. Maybe he found someone else to terrorize, or whatever game he's playing she's no longer part of. She lets herself believe this for exactly 5 hours. At 3 in the morning, someone buzzes her apartment. Tasha ignores it. The buzzer sounds again. Then again. She looks through the peephole. There's a woman in a courier uniform holding a large envelope. Tasha opens the door with the chain on and signs for the delivery through the crack. Inside the envelope is a contract. 10 pages of legal language she can barely parse. But the summary is clear. Personal assistant position, $15,000 per month, 6-month contract, housing provided, start date negotiable. There's a sticky note attached in handwriting that's too neat to be casual. You have 48 hours to decide. If interested, call the number on the card. If not interested, forget we ever met. But the note also mentions that the first month's salary has already been deposited into her account. As good faith. Tasha checks her phone. Her bank sent a notification at 2:47 a.m. Deposit of $15,000. Her balance went from negative $43 to $14,957 while she was sleeping. Her hands start shaking, not from fear, from understanding. He didn't just offer her a job, he proved he can access her bank account, proved he knows where she lives, proved he can reach her anywhere, anytime. The money isn't a gift, it's a demonstration of power. She reads the contract 6 times, looking for the trap. Personal assistant duties are vague: attending meetings, managing schedules, accompanying client to social functions. Nothing explicitly illegal, but nothing innocent either. The NDA is 10 paragraphs of legal threats that would bankrupt her 3 times over if she ever talked. There's a termination clause that's deliberately confusing. Something about breach of contract resulting in financial penalties equal to all compensation received plus damages to be determined by arbitration. The next morning she calls in sick for the first time in 8 months. She takes the subway to the Tribeca address. The building is so expensive it doesn't have a sign, just a doorman in a uniform that looks European. He asks her name. She gives her real name this time. He checks a list, nods like he expected her. The elevator needs a key card for the penthouse. The doorman swipes her up. The doors open into an apartment that's bigger than her entire building floor. Windows overlooking the Hudson, furniture that belongs in museums, and the man from the alley standing by the window in a black suit, holding a tablet, looking at her like he knew exactly what time she'd arrive. He introduces himself, Kang Min-jun. No apology for the money or the stalking or the late-night delivery. He gestures for her to sit. She stays standing. She asks what this is really about. Because nobody pays $15,000 a month for an assistant. Nobody shows up at someone's work 4 times just to leave tips. Nobody deposits money into a stranger's account at 3 in the morning unless they want something specific. Min-jun sets down the tablet. For the first time since she met him, his expression shifts into something almost amused. "You're right," he says. "I don't need an assistant. I need someone who knows how to be invisible, someone used to being underestimated, someone who understands how to keep their mouth shut without being told twice. He tells her he's been watching her for 3 weeks, not just at the restaurant, everywhere. His people ran a background check on all Le Bernardin employees because several of his business associates eat there regularly. Her background check revealed something interesting. She used to be married to Derek Pierce. Derek's father owns Pierce Development Group. Pierce Development just bid on a property that Minjun's family wants. Tasha's stomach drops. This isn't about the alley, this is about Derek. She tells Minjun she hasn't spoken to Derek's family in 6 months. She doesn't know anything about their business. She barely knew anything when she was married to him. Minjun says that's not true. She was married to Derek for 3 years. She lived in their house, she attended their dinners and events, she saw documents, she heard conversations, she knows how they think even if she doesn't realize it yet. The Pierce family designed your divorce settlement to humiliate you into silence, Minjun says. His voice is calm, factual, like he's discussing weather. They paid you nothing and made you feel worthless, but you have value, you have information, and information is the only currency that matters in my world. Tasha wants to leave, but $15,000 is already in her account, and her rent is 3 weeks late, and her electricity bill went to collections last month. Minjun watches her do the math. He can see it on her face. The moment she realizes running isn't an option. He tells her the job is real. She'll actually assist him, attend meetings, take notes, manage schedules. But occasionally he'll ask about the Pierce family, and she'll answer honestly. She asks what happens if she says no. He says the $15,000 is hers regardless, but he'll find someone else who knew the Pierce family, maybe someone who still talks to them, and when he starts asking questions, that someone will mention it to Derek. Then the Pierce family will wonder who's talking. They'll assume it's Tasha, because she has motive. She'll be a suspect whether she cooperates or not. It's the smartest trap Tasha's ever seen. Refuse and become a target anyway. Accept and at least get paid. She asks when she starts. He says today. She'll move into his property in Chelsea by end of week. He's already called Mr. Chen and quit her job for her. Already. Past tense, like her decision was never actually a decision. Tasha realizes her entire life just changed in a 10-minute conversation, and she didn't see it happening until it was finished. She asks why he's doing all this for information about a real estate deal. Minjun looks at her like she said something incredibly naive. This isn't about real estate, he says. Pierce Development has been laundering money through their projects for years. My family does the same thing, but recently Pierce cut out one of my partners from a deal in Queens. That partner died in a car accident 2 weeks later. He pauses, lets that information settle. I suspect the Pierce family of moving into territory that doesn't belong to them. If I'm right, this is about power. Power requires information. You're my information source. She asks what happens after 6 months. He says she walks away with $90,000 and a reference letter. Or she breaches contract and the NDA penalties bankrupt her permanently. The choice is hers, except it's not really a choice. It's an ultimatum wrapped in money and delivered with a smile. Tasha signs because walking away is more dangerous than staying. Minjun takes the papers without ceremony, tells her his driver picks her up Friday at 9 a.m. Pack light, everything else is provided. The Chelsea apartment Minjun moves her into has a doorman and a gym and a view of actual trees. The rent is probably 5 times her old place, but it's covered in her compensation package. Her first week is almost boring. She sits in his office in a midtown building that looks like a legitimate import-export consulting firm. She answers phones, schedules meetings, organizes files, normal assistant things. She starts to think maybe this won't be so bad. Maybe Minjun really does just need information, and she can give him a few harmless details and collect her money and disappear. On day 8, Minjun calls her into his office. He shows her a photo of Derek having lunch with a man she doesn't recognize. Minjun asks if she knows who the other man is. She doesn't. He tells her the man is a city councilman deciding on zoning permits for a Brooklyn project, Both Pierce Development and Kang Enterprises submitted bids. Minjun asks if Derek ever mentioned political connections. Tasha thinks back to a dinner party where Derek's father bragged about having friends in City Hall. She doesn't remember specifics, but she tells Minjun what she remembers. Names, restaurants, the way Derek's father talked about certain politicians like they were employees instead of elected officials. Minjun writes down every word, then thanks her and sends her back to work, like she just helped him win a game she didn't know they were playing. That's the pattern for 3 weeks. Every few days, Minjun asks about Derek's family. What car did his father drive? Where did they vacation? Who came to dinners? What did they talk about when they thought she wasn't listening? Tasha answers truthfully because the questions seem harmless, but she's starting to realize Minjun is building a profile, mapping their lives, looking for weaknesses, finding leverage points. Every small detail she gives him is another piece of a puzzle she can't see the full picture of. The first time Tasha sees Minjun be violent, she's in his office late sorting expense reports. Boring work, mind-numbing. She hears shouting in Korean from the conference room next door, then a crash, more shouting, then silence, the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. Minjun opens the door, tells her to come inside. His tone makes it clear this isn't optional. Inside is a man on his knees, blood running from his nose. 2 of Minjun's associates stand behind him. Minjun asks Tasha if she recognizes this man. She does. Marcus. A line cook from Le Bernardin. She used to take smoke breaks with him. He seemed nice. Seemed normal. Minjun explains that Marcus has been photographing the reservation book, selling celebrity sightings to tabloids, making a few $100s here and there. Not illegal, just unethical. Minjun asks if Tasha ever told Marcus anything personal. She thinks back to smoke breaks, definitely mentioned her divorce, definitely mentioned Derek's name, maybe mentioned that his family had money. Nothing specific, just venting. Marcus was a good listener. Minjun asks Marcus if he sold information about Tasha. Marcus says no. Minjun makes a small gesture with his hand. One of the associates hits Marcus hard enough to knock him sideways. Marcus starts crying, admits he told a freelance journalist that one of the waitresses used to be married to Derek Pierce. He sold Tasha's name and work schedule for $200, just $200. That's what her privacy was worth to him. Minjun asks who the journalist was. Marcus gives a name. Minjun writes it down carefully, then tells his associates to take Marcus to the basement. Tasha asks what will happen to him. Minjun says that depends on whether the journalist published anything. If the information stayed contained, Marcus gets fired and blacklisted from every restaurant in the city. If it leaked, Marcus has a bigger problem. He doesn't elaborate. He doesn't need to. Tasha realizes she's not just working for Minjun, she's under his protection. Anyone who threatens his operation threatens her, and Minjun handles threats permanently. 2 days later, Minjun's grandmother walks into his office unannounced. Madame Kang is 73 and 4 feet 11 and radiates more authority than anyone Tasha has ever met. She doesn't knock, doesn't announce herself, just appears like smoke. She looks at Tasha the way someone examines a questionable piece of fruit at the market, deciding if it's worth keeping or should be thrown away. Madame Kang speaks to Minjun in Korean, fast, clipped, angry sounding. He responds in English, clearly for Tasha's benefit. He says Tasha is his new assistant and she's performing adequately. Madame Kang switches to English, asks Tasha directly what her qualifications are. Tasha says she doesn't have formal qualifications. She worked in restaurants, learned on the job. Madame Kang makes a dismissive sound, the kind of sound that communicates entire paragraphs of judgment. She tells Minjun that hiring unqualified staff reflects poorly on the family. Minjun says Tasha has qualities more valuable than credentials. Loyalty built from necessity. She has no connections to their world, which makes her trustworthy. No competing allegiances. Madame Kang asks what Tasha's married name was. Tasha says Pierce. The temperature in the room drops. Madam Kang asks Minjun in English if he's aware he hired the ex-wife of their competitor's son. Minjun says yes, that's exactly why he hired her. Madam Kang's expression shifts into something between respect and fury, like Minjun just made a brilliant move and a terrible mistake simultaneously. She tells him in Korean he's playing a dangerous game. He responds in Korean. Tasha catches her own name, nothing else. After Madam Kang leaves, Minjun tells Tasha to forget what she heard. But Tasha realizes she's not just an assistant. She's a chess piece, and chess pieces get sacrificed when they stop being useful. The question is whether Minjun sees her as a pawn or something more valuable. She's not sure which answer scares her more. The night everything shifts starts normal. Minjun takes Tasha to a charity gala at the plaza. Her job is simple. Stand next to him, smile, don't speak unless spoken to, make him look respectable, like a legitimate businessman with a professional staff instead of whatever he actually is. She wears a dress Minjun's people selected, something expensive but not flashy, elegant but forgettable, the kind of dress that says assistant, not date. She does this for 2 hours, stands, smiles, hands Minjun his phone when it rings. Everything is fine until she sees Derek across the ballroom. Linda Pierce sees Tasha first. Her face cycles through confusion, then recognition, then disgust, then calculation, all in about 3 seconds. She says something to Derek. He turns, goes pale. Tasha wants to disappear, wants the floor to open and swallow her whole. But Minjun's hand is on her back, steering her, not away from the Pierce family, directly toward them. Linda steps forward, asks loud enough to attract attention what Tasha is doing here. Minjun introduces himself before Tasha can speak. Kang Minjun, CEO of Kang Enterprises. He gestures to Tasha like she's a business card he's presenting. My associate, Miss Monroe. Linda's eyes narrow. She asks if Tasha is working as hired help again. Minjun asks Linda to clarify. Linda says she's surprised to see the girl who used to serve their family dinner now serving drinks at a gala. Derek tells his mother to stop. Linda ignores him. She tells Minjun he should be careful. Tasha has a history of climbing social ladders she doesn't belong on. The ballroom goes quiet. People are watching, waiting to see what happens next. Minjun asks Linda very calmly if she's suggesting Miss Monroe isn't qualified to attend this event. Linda says she's not suggesting anything. She's stating facts. Tasha married Derek for money. When that didn't work, she found a new target. Minjun nods, like he's considering this seriously. Then he turns to Derek, asks if he agrees with his mother's assessment. Derek looks at Tasha. For 1 second she sees guilt, real guilt, the kind that comes from knowing you did something unforgivable. But then he looks at his mother and his fiancé and says quietly that his family tried to make Tasha feel welcome, but she never quite fit in. Something inside Tasha cracks, not breaks, cracks, like ice starting to splinter. Minjun feels it. His hand presses more firmly against her back, not pushing, steadying. He asks Derek what he does for a living. Derek says he works for his father's company. Minjun asks which projects Pierce Development is currently handling. Derek lists 3. Minjun mentions a 4th. The Brooklyn rezoning proposal. Derek's father, who had been silent, asks how Minjun knows about that. Minjun says it's public record. But I'm particularly interested because Kang Enterprises submitted a competing bid. He pauses, lets the silence stretch. I've learned quite a bit about Pierce Development recently, from a reliable source. Details about financing, partnership agreements, timeline projections, the kind of details that aren't in public filings. Derek's father understands immediately. He looks at Tasha, really looks at her. Like he's seeing her for the first time as something other than background noise. He asks if Minjun's associate has been sharing private family information. Minjun doesn't confirm or deny. He just says, when people treat others as beneath them, they forget those people are still listening, still watching, still remembering. Linda's face goes red. She calls Tasha a vindictive traitor. Derek's fiancé looks confused, like she wandered into someone else's drama and can't figure out the plot. Derek looks sick, actually nauseous. Minjun tells Linda very quietly that if she continues insulting his associate, He'll ensure Pierce Development's bid is rejected, and certain irregularities in your financing will be brought to relevant authorities. The threat lands like a physical blow. Derek's father grabs Linda's arm, pulls her away. Derek follows, one last unreadable look at Tasha. She can't tell if it's anger or regret or fear. Maybe all three. Minjun guides Tasha toward the exit. They leave 20 minutes after arriving. Mission accomplished. War declared. In the car, Tasha shakes, not from fear, from anger and humiliation and satisfaction at watching Linda Pierce crumble, all of it mixing together until she can't tell which emotion is winning. Minjun doesn't speak for 5 blocks. Then he asks if she's okay. Tasha laughs. It comes out bitter, broken. She says she's never been okay around the Pierce family. She asks if he staged the confrontation. He says no, he didn't know they'd be there. But once they were, I saw an opportunity and took it. That's what I do. Find leverage and use it. Tasha asks if that's what she is. Leverage. Minjun doesn't answer immediately. When he does, his voice is quieter, different. You started as leverage, but after 3 weeks of watching you work, handle pressure, think strategically, I'm starting to think you're more than that. I just don't know what yet. That night, Tasha lies in her Chelsea apartment realizing she just burned every bridge to her old life. The Pierce family will never forgive her. Derek will never speak to her again. She's completely untethered. The only person she has any connection to is Minjun, and she doesn't know if she can trust him. Doesn't know if trust even matters in this world. Maybe survival is enough. Maybe that's all anyone really gets. But when she checks her account the next morning, there's a bonus. $10,000. The memo says discretionary fund. Minjun's way of saying she handled last night well. Tasha hates that the money makes her feel better. Hates that she's becoming someone who can be bought. But she's also becoming someone who doesn't apologize for surviving. Someone who fights back. Someone who matters. That feeling is worth more than money. It's worth everything. 3 days later, FBI agents show up at Minjun's office. They have questions about his business dealings, specifically overseas transactions and domestic real estate. Minjun has Tasha sit in and take notes. The agents ask about shell companies, offshore accounts, properties purchased through holding companies with confusing ownership structures. Minjun answers calmly, provides documentation, never loses his composure. After they leave, Minjun explains the Pierce family filed a complaint, suggesting Kang Enterprises might be laundering money. It's baseless, but it triggers investigation. Investigations are expensive even when you're innocent. The Pierce family is trying to slow me down, make me spend resources on lawyers instead of business. Tasha asks if he's actually laundering money. Minjun looks at her for a long moment. She can't read his expression. Then he says, "The line between legal and illegal is thinner than people think. Yes, my family moves money through complex channels. Yes, some channels obscure origins, but we pay taxes, file paperwork, operate within technical boundaries." He pauses. Just barely. He asks if that changes anything for her. She says she's not sure anymore what her boundaries are. 6 weeks ago she would have quit immediately, run, called the police maybe, but 6 weeks ago she was scraping plates and getting humiliated by her ex's family. Now she's in an office overlooking Central Park making more money than she dreamed possible. Her boundaries shifted. She doesn't know if that makes her smart or corrupt. Maybe both. Maybe it doesn't matter. Minjun says boundaries are just lines people draw to feel better about choices they're already making. You've been surviving your entire life. You're just doing it more comfortably now. That doesn't make you bad, it makes you honest about what survival requires. The investigation lasts 6 weeks. During that time, Tasha sees sides of Minjun's operation she didn't know existed. Late-night meetings with people who don't give names. Phone calls in Korean that end with Minjun looking tense. Shipments that arrive at odd hours. Money moving in patterns she can't quite track. But she also sees unexpected kindness. When a warehouse employee gets arrested, Minjun pays for a lawyer, sends money to the man's family. When a small business owner falls behind on rent, Minjun restructures the lease instead of evicting, gives them time to recover. Tasha asks about this contradiction, how he can be ruthless to enemies but generous to his people. Minjun says, loyalty is built through consistent behavior. My people know I'll protect them if they're loyal. They know what happens if they're not. Simple economics, punishment and reward. But Tasha notices something else. Minjun listens when she talks, really listens. Not the way Derek used to listen, where he was clearly just waiting for her to stop talking so he could speak. Minjun asks questions, remembers details. When she mentions her old dream of opening a bakery, he asks what kind, what recipes, what neighborhood. He doesn't mock it, doesn't tell her it's unrealistic. He treats it like a legitimate business plan that just needs capital and timing. One night they're reviewing financial reports. Tasha points out an inconsistency in property acquisition costs for a Queens building. The numbers don't add up. Minjun checks. She's right, someone's skimming. Taking small amounts they think won't be noticed. He calls his accountant immediately. The man tries to explain it away. Minjun cuts him off. Be here first thing tomorrow with corrections or start looking for a new job. After he hangs up, Minjun tells Tasha she has a good eye for detail. You could have had a real career if circumstances were different. Tasha laughs. It comes out bitter. She says circumstances is just a polite word for being born poor and black and female in America. Minjun doesn't argue. He says his family came to the U.S. with nothing 40 years ago. My grandfather worked in a fish market. My father built this business by doing things you probably don't want to know about. Circumstances can be overcome, but it requires being willing to do what others won't. The next morning the accountant confesses, embezzling $70,000 over 8 months. Small amounts. Careful, but not careful enough. Minjun fires him but doesn't press charges. He tells Tasha later that pressing charges involves police and investigations and attention his business doesn't need. Instead, the accountant owes $70,000 plus interest. The debt will be collected, eventually, one way or another. Tasha realizes Minjun's world doesn't involve police or courts. It involves debts and leverage and long memories. Justice is handled privately. It's efficient but terrifying because there's no appeals process. Minjun decides guilt and punishment, and that's final. No jury, no judge, just him. And increasingly, her. 3 months into the job, Madam Kang summons Tasha to lunch. Just Tasha. They meet at a Korean restaurant so upscale it doesn't have prices on the menu. Just seasonal ingredients and chef's selections. Madam Kang orders for both without asking what Tasha wants. While they wait, Madam Kang says, I've been watching. You've been competent, discreet, useful, good qualities. She pauses. But I'm concerned Minjun is starting to rely on you for more than information. He asks your opinion on business matters, includes you in meetings you have no reason to attend. This suggests emotional investment. Tasha says she doesn't think Minjun is emotionally invested in anyone. Madam Kang smiles, the kind of smile that looks friendly but isn't. That's what makes it dangerous. Minjun built his identity around being rational, controlled. If he starts making decisions based on feelings instead of strategy, he becomes weak. Weak leaders get their families killed. Madam Kang says the contract ends in 3 months. When it does, Tasha should take her money and disappear. Go to another city, start over, forget she met the Kang family. I'll personally give you 100,000 severance if you leave quietly. Tasha asks what happens if she doesn't leave. Madam Kang says, then you become permanent. Permanent parts can't be easily removed if they become problems. Right now you're temporary, disposable. If you overstay that status, things get complicated. The food arrives, they eat in silence, expensive silence. The kind where every bite costs more than Tasha used to make in a day. Madam Kang pays, tells Tasha to think carefully about what kind of life she wants. Then she leaves. No goodbye. Just gone. That night Tasha tells Minjun about the lunch. He's angry, not at Tasha, at his grandmother for going behind his back. She had no right, he says, his jaw is tight. The contract will be honored. After 6 months you're free to leave or stay, your choice. Tasha asks what staying would mean. Minjun says honestly he doesn't know. I hired you for information about the Pierce family. That objective is complete. Pierce Development's bid was rejected. My family won. Your usefulness in that capacity is over. He pauses, looks at her like he's seeing something he didn't expect to find. But you made yourself useful in other ways. You catch discrepancies. Notice when people lie, ask questions that make me think differently. He wants to offer her a real position. Chief of operations, overseeing legitimate ventures while he handles less legitimate ones. $200,000 annually, plus profit sharing, an office, a title, respect. Tasha asks why. Minjun says, because you earned it, and because having someone around who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm wrong is more valuable than I initially understood. Everyone else is too scared or too loyal to question me. You question me constantly. It's annoying. He almost smiles. It's also necessary. Tasha says she needs time to think. He gives her 3 months, until contract end. No pressure, just an offer on the table that won't be there forever. During those months, everything changes. Pierce Development files bankruptcy. The failed bid cost everything. They'd leveraged it all on winning. Without it, they can't cover debts. Derek's father sells the business to pay creditors. The Pierce house goes on the market. Derek's parents move to Florida. Smaller place, quieter life, everything they built, gone. Linda Pierce calls Tasha. Screams for 20 minutes about how she destroyed their family. How everything that's happening is Tasha's fault. How Derek's fiancée broke off the engagement because the family has no money. How Catherine had to drop out of her graduate program. How it's all Tasha's doing. Tasha listens silently, then hangs up. She doesn't feel guilty. She feels nothing. Maybe that should scare her. It doesn't. The FBI investigation concludes with no charges. Minjun's lawyers proved all transactions were technically legal if ethically questionable. It cost $2 million in legal fees, but Minjun considers it worthwhile. The price of doing business, he says. Minjun takes Tasha to Seoul to meet extended family and see the Korean operation. First time she's left the country. First time she's had a passport that isn't expired. The family estate in Gangnam makes the Tribeca penthouse look modest. She meets uncles and cousins and partners who all assess her with the same calculating expression. Deciding if she's asset or liability. Deciding if she'll last or disappear like others before her. Last night in Seoul, Minjun takes Tasha to a private restaurant room. Just them. He says his grandmother agreed to support his decision to offer Tasha the operations position. She doesn't like it, but she respects that I thought it through strategically. There's one condition. If Tasha accepts, she needs to understand there's no going back to normal life. You'll be fully integrated into the family business. You'll know things that make you complicit. You'll attend meetings where decisions have consequences you can't undo. You'll be protected but also monitored. The family expects loyalty beyond a paycheck. Tasha asks if she'll be expected to do illegal things. Minjun says, you'll be expected to look away when illegal things are done. Not the same as doing them, but morally equivalent. He doesn't blink. I won't lie about that. They fly back to New York. 2 weeks left on contract. Tasha spends them thinking about who she was 6 months ago and who she's becoming. Old Tasha would have run, would have taken the money and disappeared. Gone to another city, changed her name maybe. But old Tasha was also broke and powerless and getting humiliated by people who thought she was worthless. Old Tasha apologized for existing. New Tasha has an apartment in Chelsea, real money, skills she didn't know she had, respect from people who used to scare her. She also has blood on her hands. Metaphorically, if not literally, she helped Minjun destroy the Pierce family. She looked away while people were hurt. She's complicit in a system she thought she'd never be part of. But maybe everyone's complicit in something. Maybe the only difference is whether you admit it. Last day of contract, Minjun asks for her decision. Tasha says yes. She'll take operations. Minjun doesn't smile, but something in his expression softens, like relief he didn't know he was holding. Welcome to the family, he says, then hands her a new contract. Permanent employment, no end date, just a termination clause requiring 6 months' notice from either party. Tasha signs it. The pen feels heavy, final. She's officially no longer a waitress, no longer temporary. She's part of the Kang family business. Whether that makes her powerful or doomed, she'll find out soon enough. But what Tasha doesn't know is that Madame Kang just received a call from Seoul. The family elders have questions about Min Jun's new American operation chief, questions about why he's giving this much authority to an outsider, questions about whether Tasha can be trusted or if she's a liability waiting to happen. And in the Kang family, when the elders start asking questions, someone always pays the price. If you've made it this far, you already know this isn't your typical rags to riches story. This is what happens when survival requires compromise, when dignity costs more than you can afford, when the only way out is through. Hit subscribe because Tasha's about to learn that earning a throne and keeping it are two very different battles, and in Min Jun's world, the second one is always bloodier than the first.